as we get started, here's what we know from our experience, both Rodney and I, and working with busy adults, from coaching leaders, from our experience with all sizes of organizations, that people are crazy busy. Life is chaotic. We're often stressed or frustrated or confused, even overwhelmed. So what are some of the reasons for that? From working with thousands of leaders all over the world, we've discovered that most of the pressure, the stress that we deal with is a result of decisions and behaviors, our own decisions that we make and behaviors that we are walking through on a daily basis. And so our challenges, or this overwhelm, this stress, is actually self-generated. We began evaluating our own lives, and we found that to be true in our own lives too. We don't just coach people on this. We actually work through these same tools and these same processes in our own lives. And so as what we found was that we create our own drama. We'll make a decision, and a few hours or a few days or a few weeks later, those same decisions come back and create challenges, either for us or for our team, or in our homes and our families. And so we create our own drama. I mean, we're all, on some level, we're all drama queens and drama kings. So what do we do about that? Can we change, or is this just the world that we live in? Where do we look for answers? How do we get help with this? I think there's times when we go through some challenge, especially if it's an interpersonal relationship challenge that we're dealing with. We'll go to a friend and we'll ask a friend, hey, I want to tell you about what I'm dealing with here and get some feedback from you, especially if it's a trusted friend or colleague that we deal with. And or we'll find the latest book, something that helps us address the challenge or the issue that we're dealing with. Or we'll go to a conference and try to get, to learn how to deal with this in an effective way. Or maybe we go to a coach or a mentor and we say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. How do you deal with this? And they sit down with us and they walk us through, how we should handle it. And then a few days later, or a couple of weeks later, we come back to the same problem. We come around to the same problem. Or we deal with a similar problem, or a problem that's just slightly different. But what if you could significantly simplify your decision-making and your priority management? If you could simplify your life, your work, your leadership, your decision-making, what would that change for you? Could you spend more time with your kids? Could you spend more time with your grandkids? Could you put more time and energy into areas of passion where you're either developing more leaders or you're encouraging younger people within your organization or your team, or you're giving back in your community or in your place of worship? What would you do with that time if you could simplify things in a way that you would find more margin? What we found is that in order for people to make this change, what they need is a simple, proven process that allows them to find more margin and develop better relationships, to be more fulfilled in their work. And so a few years ago, we began developing a simple model, a simple process. We call it the 5 phases of leadership. And today, all of our coaching, all the coaching that we do, all the counseling that we do, all the consulting that we do, is all the training, the products that we're developing, everything is based on this simple process. We use the simple metaphor of a construction of a building to help us remember and communicate the 5 phases of simple leadership. And if you've been around the construction of a building, then you know that the foundation is most important. Architects and consultants and engineers and contractors, they all get together and they spend months, even years, planning and designing and evaluating and tweaking, preparing the foundation of a building project. I mentioned the other day in a training session that last year we were building a commercial building in our organization. And just as we were about to begin the construction, we realized that the foundation was designed entirely wrong. In fact, the consultant that we were using for the foundation, the structural consultant we were using, refused to make the necessary changes to get it right. So we went and hired a different consultant to make the changes and to get it right. Why? Because the foundation is so incredibly important. If the foundation is off, if the foundation isn't right, then there's going to be problems, significant problems with the entire rest of the project. And so the 5 phases of simple leadership for us are really a time-saving tool, a relational tool, a money-saving process to help automate dramatic improvements in our life and in our work. And so for us, the foundation, as we look at the 5 phases of simple leadership, we start from the ground up with purpose, and then to phase 2, path and plan and prepare. You should see that there on your screen there. And so for us, they really became a process to help us automate dramatic improvements in our work and in our life. And so as you plan, as you design, as you build a strong, solid foundation, both for your work and for your life outside of work, you'll learn how to navigate through the 5 phases at the right time. Does that make sense? Is that helpful to you?
You know, Mike, when of all the things, I think we're all readers. We're all, wanting to grow in our leadership. And what I found through the years of all the reading and the seminars and, I've got some books behind me. You got notebooks all over shelves everywhere. And it seems like we almost think that it's not good leadership material if it's not really complex. But it gets more complex and adds on. And we start to say, really there's not time to do all these things, nor do I understand it. Because I think one of the things that I believe people will see that you and I have already begun to really understand is the simpleness of taking this thing and learning it from the bottom and just building on 1 little, 2 little, 3 little, 4 little, 5 little principles. It's changed my life in it, and I know it would change theirs. So I think it does make it easier.
Yes, and I agree. So for many people, they may not be familiar with the 5 phases. And so let's just walk through them real quick through the 5 phases. And as we go through them, I'm going to share the 3 tools. Tonight, again, we're looking at 3 ways that we can simplify our work and our life. And so the 3, and those 3 ways are the 3 primary tools that we use at Guidestone to walk people through. And so as we go through the 5 phases of simple leadership, there's a tool for phase 1, a tool for phase 2, a tool for phase 3 that we use, and they'll make sense for you as we walk through here. So we start with phase 1, purpose, as Rodney and I mentioned. We build this solid foundation with phase 1, purpose, because to find fulfillment in our life and in our work, every person needs to clearly understand what's most important and how we can achieve those things. In other words, how our work fits into our overall life. Writing out a simple personal plan, which is the tool that we use in phase 1, writing out a simple personal plan was transformational for my personal and professional life. And as we work with people every day, every week, we explain how a simple personal plan has brought dramatic improvements to the life and work of thousands of people all over the world. We walk them through a simple guide and process so that they can experience the freedom and the health that they crave, the fulfillment that they're looking for in their work, the margin that they want. The simple personal plan tool in phase 1 is really a fascinating tool for us and for people so they can look at who and what is most important in life and work. It helps us evaluate our actions and behaviors to shape a new reality. So that's phase 1, purpose. And then once we understand how our work fits into our overall life, and here's the thing, we know that that's important. There's so many people that they go to work or they work a particular job or they stay in a particular job because they have so much student loan debt or they have mortgage debt or they have kids in a certain school or whatever the issue is. They want to maintain a certain type of lifestyle. And in order to do that, they have to continue earning the paycheck that they're earning. And they're in a job that they can't stand and they don't know how to get out of. I've been there. I understand what that's like. And so understanding what you really want for your work life, and how you want that work life to fit within your overall life is so incredibly important. So that foundation, again, the purpose, the foundation of phase one purpose is so incredibly important to all of the rest of the phases. We'll mention more about that here in just a second. Phase two is path. To be effective in your work, all of us need clarity about where we're headed. I mean, if we're not sure where we're going, there's no way we're going to get there, right? And so the question that we should be asking is, why are we trading a substantial part of our life every day to serve the organization or to do the work that we're doing? Whether it's in business, a corporate environment, whether it's an entrepreneurial startup, or if it's in some type of ministry or nonprofit or healthcare or government, why is it that we're trading all of this time? Most of our time and energy throughout the day goes into our work. Is it worth it? See, when people work through the Simple Vision tool, they're blown away by both its simplicity and its power to bring dramatic improvements to their work and to their influence, because it helps us identify where I'm headed, where I want to go. The principle here, and maybe if you've heard us do teaching and training before, you've probably heard us talk about this principle. It's when I know what the future looks like, when I take time to think through what the future looks like, where I'm headed, then I can work every day toward that envisioned future.
Mike, do you think sometimes I know my life is very hectic, your schedules are hectic, and it's almost like we kind of plan our life reactionary versus having an actionable plan. So in other words, I put out the fire today that lit, and I know there's going to be other fires tomorrow. And so we spend a lot of our time really, we're on a path, but it's not really a path that's directed. It's almost a path that just takes turns according to what happens throughout that day. And I think that's one of the things when I began to go back and really delineate what is the purpose and really figure that thing out, it made me so I don't have to fight fires every day. It's more of a directed path.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. I think many of us have the way one of my good friends, Jeremy Kubicek, says he often asks people that he's working with, are you working intentionally or accidentally? Yeah. Are you living intentionally or accidentally? And so the question that we have to ask is, hey, are we ready to begin to say yes to simplicity and no to complexity? We think I can't remember if I mentioned this at the very beginning, but when we think that if we're going to make a significant transition, that it's going to bring more chaos into our life or more complexity. And in reality, it will actually simplify things for us. We can make better progress. So we look at number one, phase one, who or what's most important. The tool there is Simple Personal Plan. And then phase two is where am I headed? And the tool we use there is the Simple Vision tool that we have. And then phase three is, in phase three, we ask, okay, if we know what I should be doing, or if we know how my life fits in my overall work, and we know where we're headed, then the question becomes, what should I be doing? What should I be doing on a daily basis to move toward the vision? Again, we mentioned a little bit ago that if we know what the end looks like, then we can work every day toward that envisioned future. We can become what we've set out to be, or where we've set out to go. And once you have clarity about where you're headed, you need to know and you need to identify what the specific disciplines, outcomes, improvements are necessary to move you forward. We all, a lot of the times, the questions that we have, especially when we do training like this, is I'm stuck, with this either particular issue or challenge, or I've been stuck for a number of months, kind of at an impasse in this area. What can I do to move forward? And it often just involves identifying simple disciplines. We often work through, I know for my own life, we identify 90-day goals. and once a quarter, I get away for a day and a half or 2 days to think through what are my 90-day goals. And I used to identify, a handful of goals, 8, 10, 12 goals that I was going to do. We're all ambitious and we want to accomplish a lot. We think 90 days is a long period of time. But now I've gotten to the place where I identify 3 kind of fundamental personal goals and then 3 professional goals that I want to accomplish every quarter. And I focus, if I don't get anything else done the entire quarter, I'm going to get those things done. And those things go, I tape them onto my computer. I tape them on the mirror of my vanity in my bathroom. I tape them on my desk at work. I put them everywhere that I can. I share them with my wife. I share them with my friends. In fact, just this past weekend, I pasted them in I'm in a group with 8 or 9 other people that we meet every week, and we challenge each other in a mastermind group to move forward. And so I share these things with people, and you can believe they're going to be checking in on me. Am I moving those things forward? Am I getting them accomplished? So what should we be doing? Every Monday, if this is where I'm going in phase 2, if I've identified this is where I want to go, this is where I'm headed. And what do I need to do on Monday morning to move that forward? What do I need to do on every Tuesday or every Wednesday? What are those things? And so we have the simple one-page business plan, or if you're in a nonprofit or a ministry type setting, the simple one-page business or organizational plan that helps you identify. We have a lot of questions that we've put into the simple one-page business plan that helps you to identify what I should be doing and what my team should be doing on a regular basis to move toward the vision. Those in phase 1 through 3, we use these 3 foundational tools to help us to simplify our work and our life. So do these 3 tools that we use address every problem that we face on a regular basis? No. But as we work through phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, we've seen them over and over again resolve 80 to 90% of the day-to-day challenges that people are facing, because their work and their life are simplified dramatically.
Mike, one of the things too that we talk about in this, the key word here is simple. Obviously we keep seeing and we talk about, and you said this, and from reading and experience, but I thought it'd be good to reiterate it here. Oftentimes, and I started out this way too, when I first did my original begin to lay out my action plans, I noticed that I've got 12 things I want to accomplish, and my schedule says you're an idiot. You can't do these 12 things. You'll never. And I didn't. And before long, I noticed that it just wears you out to start thinking, not only am I not completing these things, I can't. And so you talked about the fact that if you're not getting results, get more specific. And I think that's kind of unique. You gave an illustration about that today that was real good. And I didn't know if you want to give that again, but just sharing how do we get more specific and get it down to actionable plan items we can accomplish.
Yeah, and this is one question that Anne-Marie had a little bit earlier. She said, how do we balance our schedule and our work with the personal time while we're, for her and her situation, she's working from home without sacrificing relationship and other responsibilities. And there's a great principle that I learned a number of years ago from an executive coach that I've called the principle of specificity. My daughter says that's a really big word. And so here's what's important. And the principle is, if in any area of your life or work, if you're not getting the results that you desire, get more specific with it. So if you're having trouble maintaining balance, or you're having trouble getting unstuck in a particular area, get more specific. So get more specific with when you need to accomplish it, with setting a deadline. Get more specific with who can help you do that. Get more specific about contacting them. When are you going to contact them? What are you going to ask them to do? Get more specific about what actually needs to be done. And maybe you need to break it down into individual steps and get more specific with the steps that need to happen. Here, the example that we like to use, we say, okay, I want to get healthier. And so if I want to get healthier, then there's two different action items or disciplines that we like to use to contrast these things. And so one action item would be, okay, I'm going to work out more. If I want to get healthier, then I'm going to work out more. Another way to write that same, a similar action item would be, I'm going to run on the elliptical from 5:30 to 6:30, or I'm going to run on the elliptical at 5:30 every morning, 3 miles on, I said every morning, Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday morning. I mean, you get that specific. So which one are we going to get more progress with? Are we going to get more progress with an action item that is written like, I'm going to work out more? Or are we going to get better progress when we get so specific? We're talking about how far we're going to run or how long we're going to run and the actual days we're going to do it and the time that we're going to do it. And so the more specific that we can get, the more specific we get, the more accountability is created. So if you wanted to write this out, on the left-hand side of your page, you would write the word specificity. And then you draw an arrow. And then in the middle of your page, you write the word accountability. And then you draw another arrow to the right. And then on the right-hand side of your page, you write results. So as you're reading from left to right, you have specificity leads to greater accountability, which leads to better results. And when we talk about accountability, especially if you're the one that's getting more specific with it, then it's self-accountability, which is the best kind of accountability. It's a whole lot better for you to be poking yourself and to be prodding yourself than to have somebody else being critical or telling you where you need to improve or whatever. And so getting more specific helps us to get better results. And so that leads us then to phase 4, which is really where it starts to get fun. This is where we all like to hang out. We all like to get stuck because it's where all of life and work happens. Phase 4 is all about managing priorities and making decisions. And so in phase 4, we learn to use a series of tools that we've created to effectively manage schedules, to manage decisions. I mean, it's things like, how can I keep up with my email? I get inundated with all this email. Or how can I manage my schedule? Or how do I manage my email and schedule with an assistant? How can I have a challenging conversation with a direct report or with my boss? How can I move this particular initiative forward? How do I do strategic planning? I mean, what are the things that I need to do strategic planning for my business or my nonprofit or my ministry? How and when should I move forward? So that's phase 4. We'll talk more about that here in just a second. And then phase 5 is people. I think for me, this is the most fascinating phase for us, phase 5, people. This is where we ask, who is speaking into each phase? Who is speaking into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? And here's the interesting thing about phase 5. When we first developed the model a couple of years ago, phase 5 was not part of it. And I think you can understand a little bit because this is the world where we all live in. Phase 5 actually helps us think through, who's helping me think through what's most important in my life and work, or how my work fits in my overall life in phase 1, or who's helping me evaluate where I'm headed in phase 2, or who's helping me think systematically through what I should be doing in phase 3, or who's speaking into how I manage my day-to-day decisions and priorities in phase 4. And this is why it's hard. In one segment of the market, there was some research done just a few months ago, and they found that more than 70% of the leaders or the administrators or executives in this market segment said they have 0 close friends. 0. I mean, that's not, I have less than 5, or I can count them on both hands, or or they said more than 70% of leaders said they have 0 close friends. That means nobody to get feedback from, nobody to bounce ideas off of, nobody to go deep in relationship with, nobody that we're doing community with. And because we're not getting regular feedback, so much of our time is consumed by activities that are of little value and low importance. And at some point, we all realize that I'm wasting a ton of time. And so then we decide, okay, I need to get more productive, more efficient, more effective. We need to make more income, or we need to get we need to generate more revenue, or we need to work through changing our behaviors or habits, or work on improving leadership skills. And yes, we need to do all those things, but you can't effectively prioritize your day in phase 4 until you clearly see what items are most important for your schedule and your calendar. And you can't adequately set up your calendar until you identify the behaviors and disciplines in phase 3 that are going to allow you to succeed, that are going to allow you to move toward your vision. And you can't create that effective business plan or organizational plan or ministry plan until you clearly articulate your vision for the future, for your team, for what you see it accomplishing in phase 2. And we can't discover and clarify our business vision, our organizational vision, until you know how your career and your organization fit into your overall life in phase 1. So do you see now why we struggle? Do you see why all of life feels so complex and so overwhelming? Most people have skipped over fundamental steps or phases that, if given just a little bit of attention, could simplify their life for the rest of their lives. And so as you think about how your work and your life, you think about how your work and your life play out. We need every one of these phases. We need to be making simple, fundamental decisions that automate thousands of other decisions for us, for our team members, for our organizations. And yet most people have never considered their foundation. They've never stopped to think about phase 1 purpose. How does my work fit into my overall life? And as a result, their entire building, if we use that metaphor, their entire life, their life's work feels all screwed up. Maybe you've heard me tell the story about the afternoon several years ago when I stood in the kitchen with my wife, and she said this to me. She said, "Mike, there's a part of you that's dying, and I don't know if you're ever going to get it back." That afternoon, I was stuck in phase 4. I was trying to make decisions, trying to manage priorities, trying to keep all these balls in the air without the solid foundation of phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. I was trying to keep it all together, and I was running over my team. I was running over my family. And many executives, many entrepreneurs, many ministry and nonprofit leaders that we've worked with, they go to bed every night and they wake up every morning thinking about, how am I going to get through all these emails? How am I going to help my team members? How can I get on track with my schedule? How can I make more income? How can I make more revenue? How can we get more productive and more effective? And we spend all day tracking projects and chasing people and going from meeting to meeting. And at some point, discouraged and disillusioned, we try to figure out why we're not being more effective, why our work is no longer fulfilling, why we dread going to work. Our responsibilities and our work and our relationships, they become significantly more challenging, significantly more complex if we haven't worked through the 5 phases.
Mike,
yeah.
It seems like too, when we're a little unclear or not crystal clear on our plan, then by not having the end result in mind or know where we're going, our path gets skewed. And so one way, I would say that to leaders is sometimes we're looking for all these things. Maybe the way to say it is to get a better path, but it's only leading to the wrong plan. So by getting the foundation right, it helps us have our path right, which is the direction, and then that plan is there. And I think a lot of people want to jump in at the plan or the top, and we miss those first couple of phases, and we wonder why our direction is wrong. So what is that old saying? We're going the wrong direction, but we're getting there fast. And I think that's where it's so fundamental that we do go back to that purpose and get that corrected.
Yeah, and I think for most of us that's true. We want to make progress and we see success. I mean, this is the counterintuitive part of what we're dealing with. We want to make progress. We want to be successful. And so we equate that with productivity or effectiveness or efficiency and the system and processes. Here's one thing I shared earlier. I've worked with 4 organizations over the last 20 years. And my wife and I were talking this morning. We had never realized this until this morning. Every organization that I've worked with over the last 20 years, when I left, they did not directly replace my role. They didn't fill my position. Right. In fact, several of the organizations have never filled my position. Now,
so what does that say for you?
Yeah, some people might say, well, that's because you weren't worth anything. But here's what we did. In fact, 3 or 4 of the organizations were experiencing double-digit decline when I joined the organization, and we came there to turn things around, to reinvigorate the vision, to re-energize the teams. And so we would put the right people in place in every situation. We hired new people. We trained the people that were there. We put in new systems, new processes that would automate many of these day-to-day challenges that we were facing. And as a result, we got the right people in place and the right systems and processes in place, and then it'll actually work you out a job. Now, I'm not advocating that you work yourself out of a job so that you get laid off or get fired or whatever, but what we want to do that same type of thing in our life. If we can take simple tools, and we can use these simple tools in phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, we'll put these simple tools in place and make these fundamental decisions. It then automates, or it gives us a process. It prepares us to do better in phase 4. So it saves us an enormous amount of time. I started off by saying the 5 phases of simple leadership became a time-saving tool, a money-saving tool. And that's true for us. It saves us an enormous amount of time because there's certain things that my wife doesn't have to ask me about, that my partners don't have to ask me about, that my team members don't have to ask me about. We've settled those things. We know where we're going. We know what we have to do on a regular basis. And so we can save an enormous amount of time. We don't have to deal with those day-to-day challenges anymore. So I think
Mike,
go ahead.
I was going to say also, every leader, if you're a real leader and you have a leader heart, you really have a heart for others. You do. You're not a leader if no one's following and if you're not ahead of the people. And so to me, I see this as when we begin to help leaders understand their purpose and their path and their plan and their preparation, they're moving forward. And as they do that, they turn around and notice there's people all around them that are doing the same thing. We create that synergy and that momentum. And that's how leaders develop leaders, really. And that's the cool part about number 5. You look over there and you say, wow, there was people connected to me at every phase of this. And I had some part in that process and they had some part in my process.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And as we've worked with organization leaders, we've learned that phase 5, you just mentioned phase 5, that's really where the magic happens. And I would be one of those people, or I would have been one of those people that said I had no friends. I had nobody that I was interacting with on a regular basis. And fortunately, I put some things in place, some very specific disciplines that have helped me make significant progress in that area. But that's where the magic happens. But in phase 5, but many people, in fact, most busy adults, even busy stay-at-home parents, they skip, like you said, they skip phases 1 through 3, and they want to stay in phase 4, never making it to phase 5 because we're so busy. And when we get stuck in phase 4, and we all do it, we miss out on the deep, meaningful relationships in life. We miss out on richness and fullness and fulfillment in our work. And without deep, meaningful relationships and fulfillment in our work, we're going to burn out. Our building, if we want to use that metaphor again, our building cannot withstand the storms of life and our work. It's as simple as that. And so learning how to navigate the 5 phases is so important. Most people, what most people are looking for is a leader who just took a look in the mirror and decides to step up and say, hey, it's my bad. It was me. It's been me all along. And so as you think about the 5 phases, are you responsive to them or are you resistant? Are you willing to say, hey, I'm the one that's been screwing up. I haven't developed enough margin, so I've been reacting. I've not been living intentionally. I've been living accidentally. And so it's created more chaos for my team. It's creating more chaos in my relationships. It's creating more complexity at home. And I'm sorry. I think one thing, just to be totally transparent with you, I had one of these conversations this past weekend. I called somebody that I've been working together with for months. And we've experienced some challenging situations over the last few months. And I just realized sitting down over the last week or so that the decisions that I was making and some of the priorities that I had created more complexity in that relationship. And I had to call them and say, hey, it's been me. It's my fault. And they even wanted to say, well, I don't know if that's true. But for me, I said, no, it's me. I'm the one that's messed this up. And I'm sorry. And we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna get it straight. And when you do that, when we're able to do that, influence goes up, respect goes up. People are looking for a leader that they want to follow. And if you want to be a leader that people want to follow, then we've got to be willing to say, hey, I've messed up and I need to stop creating more complexity for my life and for those who are closest to me, both at home and at work.
And I would say, Mike, it's the same with you and with me as well. You would not have realized that, and nor would I realize that when those things happen to me, that I've gotten off track, if I didn't understand and have written out what the purpose and the path and the plan was. So as we go back and we review what we know we're supposed to be doing, all of a sudden we realize, hey, the train has jumped the track. But we wouldn't know that if it wasn't already delineated and understood. We would think we're still doing well. So I think that's one of the reasons those first few phases of the Simple Leadership is so critical, because it becomes our guidepost. It becomes the compass, if you will, to always know which way we're supposed to be going.
Yeah, and I think that is true. There was a time when I would not have been, assessing myself or been self-evaluative enough to recognize that. Now, like I said, it went on for a period of months. And so, I've still got a lot of work to do. And I think that's what's important. I want you to hear that. This isn't something that we feel like we've all figured out. I would never want someone to get that impression from me. And I know Rodney's the same way. And I think the fact that you guys are here, you're in a teachable position, you're in a learning environment, and so you feel the same way. We're not talking about something that we've got all figured out and that we execute on 100% of the time. This is something that's an ongoing thing for us, and we're constantly trying to make better decisions. And the way that we say it is, we want to make simple decisions that then automate or simplify thousands of other decisions for us in the future. And so when you put all this together, what we want to do and what we're trying to do is help people look at yourself, look at your life, look at your work in the mirror and say, what is my current reality? What are my behaviors? How am I interacting with people? How am I spending my time? So many people, we mentioned this earlier, that they feel like they have to endure their work so they can enjoy the rest of their life. They go to work and they go to work on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and every day. I mean, even Monday, they're looking forward to the weekend. Or they go to work to make money so that they can take a big vacation at some point. Or they go to work and work so they can get away for the weekend. And, we want to enjoy life and work. And I think inside all of us, we want to do fun work. I decided a long time ago, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. And if it's not something I'm really excited and passionate about, I'm not going to do it. And that's challenging, again, because some of us have reached the point where we're making good money and we have to walk away from that into something where there's a whole lot more unknowns. And so if you're going to be able to do that, if you're going to be able to simplify your life and your work, it'll have everything to do with making the simple decisions in phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 that help us with thousands of other decisions in our daily life and work. And it's then that we realize, as we begin making progress, the fun and fulfillment in life and work can be off the charts. It really all depends on learning how to navigate the 5 phases of simple leadership. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah, one, and I know we'll deal with some questions at the end, but I think this one particular one might fit really well right here as well from Laura, and is just saying, how do I keep from getting distracted or sidetracked so easily? I know I'm like that. That old thing, we're talking, oh, there goes a squirrel, and so now I'm down that path, and all of us do that. So you just kind of answered it, but to answer her question, it might be good to concisely say something about that.
Yeah. So how do I keep from getting distracted? And I think as we work through phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, and the 3 primary tools that we use, again, I want to mention them so you remember them. And so in phase 1, it's the simple personal plan. In phase 2, it's simple vision tool. And then in phase 3, it's simple, the simple 1-page business plan tool. And as we work through those tools, we actually write out each one of those. We use each one of those tools to actually write out. In fact, a lot of times I encourage people to write it out, and then if you want to come back later and type it into a document, that's great as well. And so as we coach people too, we coach people through them. We always encourage them to do that. And once you write those things down, it's something that you review on a regular basis. The difference between the business plan, and that's why it's important to have something that's simple. I mean, 1 page that you can actually hang on the wall. Many of our clients take the work that they do and they'll hang all 3 documents on the wall above their desk or in their cubicle or in a home office, or they have them, handy on their computer so they can get to them real easily, so they can refer back to them. I mentioned earlier that I do a 90-day review. And part of that quarterly review, I review in detail my personal plan. I review in detail the vision for my work, and I review in detail my plans, my business plan, my organizational plan. And each time, sometimes I tweak it more than others, but each time I tweak it. And so what that does is, at a minimum, every 90 days I'm going to review those. Now, I also have built into my schedule every Thursday afternoon to review my business vision and my business plan. So that way, every week I'm coming back to what's most important. And so even if I get distracted for a few days during the week, I get reset every Thursday afternoon, which helps me go into the weekend with a clear mind and then come out of the weekend coming into the next week with clarity about what I'm going to do. So I think that's a great question. And these tools, while we don't, we might not review them every single day once we get familiar with them, they become an anchor that keeps us from getting off track and from getting distracted as we move forward.
Mike, there's a number of questions which we'll get to in a minute that kind of deal with the tools, how, what. So it might be good if you want to go ahead and share, because I think to answer some of these questions, it might be good for them to understand better how they can get the tools, and then we can discuss that. Because some of these questions are about that.
Let me talk to that. Talk about that here just a second. I want to make sure do here, see if there's any other questions that have to do with some of these related things.
Well, so there is one question here that simply wants to know, where do we find these helpful people when you work for yourself and basically by yourself? And I might even interject something into that. I mean, for the most part, while we work with people coaching and organizations, we work by ourselves a lot too. And I have a home office and work out of that. What I found in answer to that is learn to network yourself and on purpose do that. Find maybe a few hours a week, if nothing else, if that's all you have, to find maybe a forum or Mike, you're in a mastermind group. Takes an hour or two a week. There may be I love the coffee shop. It's amazing when you're focused on something, you will run into people who are focused on the same things or can sharpen you. And the other day I ran into a guy. I've only met him once, but just ran into him at the coffee shop, and an older gentleman. He's retired, and he just hadn't had anyone to talk to in a while. And I just sat down and began to talk to him, and an hour and a half later, the guy's just a wealth of knowledge, and nobody's asking him the questions. So I thought, that was an hour and a half that was I said deserved for him, but I needed it and it helped me. So you may have something else there, but helpful people are everywhere if you look for them.
Yeah, and and when we say that, that is true. That's absolutely true. But I can remember times when I felt like nobody. In fact, I've said things this over the last few months. Hey, I feel like nobody understands what I'm going through right now, or nobody can relate. Nobody that I know or that's close enough to me that I would want to share this with can relate to what I'm going through. And so there's things like that really trip us up and keep us from moving. So what we need to do is, there's, it's not that nobody can understand. In fact, about 7 years ago, when I first started the journey to which then became the model that we're using now, 5 phases of simple leadership, I began writing. I was having some extreme challenges that I mentioned earlier. I talked about my wife and her saying that there's a part of me that's dying, and she didn't know if I'd ever get it back. When I started that journey, I started writing about it on a blog, and almost immediately people started commenting or emailing me, even calling me saying, hey, I'm going through the same thing as a young leader, and I thought nobody else was experiencing this. Nobody's talking about this, but you are. And so what did you do? How did you work through that? And so I said, well, here's, a tool that I found that, somebody else had, or here's something that I learned from this person, and started sharing it. And I found out there were thousands of people, of young leaders or growing leaders or even seasoned, experienced leaders all over the world that were dealing with many of the same problems that I was and that I am. And so I almost never eat lunch alone. I mean, I schedule several meetings a week where I'm eating lunch or occasionally even a breakfast with someone else. Every week, as Rodney mentioned, I meet with 8 other people on a mastermind call. And we get very direct and we hold each other accountable. We've been meeting together for more than 2 years. And so you might say, if you've been meeting together that long, how do you keep the energy there? How do you keep it fresh and alive? Well, we're constantly changing it up with each other. And then also, and what I would encourage you to do, if this is an area where you really want to connect with some other people, shoot me an email, shoot Rodney an email, and let us know, how you'd like to connect with people. We'll connect you with people. We work with thousands of people every single week. We know who we can connect you with. We can probably send you a short list of people that we could connect you with that would love to connect with you around a challenge that you're working through. And we'd love to do that. So make sure you take that opportunity. I'm not kidding. Shoot me an email. We'll be glad to make that connection. Now, here's what we want you to see. We can't find more margin today if we haven't thought significantly about how to simplify tomorrow. If we keep going at the same pace that we're going, there's no way that we're going to have more margin tomorrow to have better relationships and better connections. And we can't develop better connections today if we haven't thought significantly about what we want those relationships to look like tomorrow. We can't be more fulfilled in our work today if we haven't thought significantly about what it should look like tomorrow. We can't be more effective or more productive today if we haven't thought significantly about what needs to be done tomorrow. And it doesn't have to be hard. And so that's why we developed these 3 simple tools, the primary tools that we use in phase 1 through 3, and then all of the tools that we use and all the training that we use in phase 4. Because we don't want it to be hard. We had to go through a lot of the hard work to bring this stuff together, and we want it to be simple. In fact, it's why we created our online training. We knew that we couldn't scale it big enough in live events and workshops and conferences, and it's expensive to go to all those things. So we wanted to make it as simple as possible to access this. So it doesn't have to be hard. It can be simpler. Your work can be simpler. Your life can be simpler. Relationships can be simpler yet deeper. Your leadership can be simpler. The question is, are you ready to say no to complexity, to more chaos, and to say yes to simplicity?